Nick Friedman, take three.
I'm excited to welcome on you guys to the fifth episode of What Coaches Think. We have three great coaches with us today. And just kind of start this off, though. All you guys have had incredible journeys to get where you guys are at today. We'll start with you, Coach Pannone. I mean, kind of talk about how you got to the point now where you're the Erie BayHawks head coach.
So I started out when I graduated high school. I had some small opportunities to play, but I went right away into being an assistant coach at the high school that I played at, and started working full time. And at 20 years old, I decided I wanted to do basketball full time. So I actually became a manager at University of South Florida and became a head coach at the high school I was coaching at. And I was a manager for 1 year, and it wasn't necessarily a great experience. Some of that was probably my own immaturity and arrogance. Another part of it was just at times I think the culture in college basketball, the way that people are treated is not necessarily great. So I did that for a year, and at 20 I also started working for a guy by the name of David Thorpe, who was training NBA players, preparing guys for the NBA draft, and working with players full time. And so I did that from about 20 to 25 as a high school head coach and helping coach Thorpe. And from there I went to a junior college at Wallace State Community College. From there I started my international coaching career, coaching in China for Foshan Long Lions and the Chinese Basketball Association. I came back from there, and we worked with 6 NBA players full-time throughout the season: Kevin Martin, Corey Brewer, Ed Davis, Nick Kalathis, Gal Meckel, and Omri Caspi. And that was kind of the first year I wasn't a part of a team, which I really missed. And I got an opportunity to go to the Erie BayHawks as an assistant coach when the Orlando Magic owned it. And I took that opportunity. And then from there, my wife had really wanted to live in Germany, and I wanted her in Europe, and I really wanted to coach in Europe. And I was offered a job in second division Germany for the Hanau White Wings as an assistant coach. From there, went to Hapoel Jerusalem to being a head coach in BC Prvica in Slovakia, to back to Hapoel Jerusalem. And I got really lucky that when David Griffin took the job as president of the Pelicans and hired Trajan Langdon, that they were looking for an American international coach to be the head coach of their G League team. And the right people recommended me to him, and a lot of luck in getting the position that I'm in now.
Without a doubt. Coach Toppert, I mean, you've been on before. We did the Instagram Live. So the kind of people, some people obviously kind of know you, but you're Memphis assistant coach now. Take us through how you've got to the point you're at.
Yeah, I think for each of us here, you could do an entire episode on like Ryan's journey, right? On Nick's journey. I mean, for me, I played at Cornell University in upstate New York, and then I was fortunate enough to play for 8 years after college. Won a G League championship, then it was the D League, and then went overseas, Spain, Italy, Germany, New Zealand, played all over the place. And when I finished and settled down, I basically started coaching prep school basketball, and similar to Ryan, training guys with Gannon Baker. We had just started an organization called Elevate Sports Institute. They had a baseball program. They wanted to start a basketball program to compete with IMG. And so I was kind of charged with laying the foundation for that. I coached 3 prep school teams my second season. Each team played a 30-game schedule. That was 90 prep school basketball games to coach, running 3 practices a day. Actually, Nick was one of my assistant coaches. And, it was a grind, but it was awesome. And it was it was really where I got a ton of coaching reps, and it had a ton of freedom, and just got to, go crazy on everything. And, we sent over 20 kids to the Division I schools. After that, I would run the NBA pre-draft program that we had. We worked with a lot of guys. I think over 15 guys that we worked with ended up getting drafted, worked with the 3 highest paid undrafted players in NBA history. And that got me on the radar for the Rockets, where I became an assistant coach for the G League team, the RGV Vipers. It's a team that's had a lot of success in the past. Guys like Nick Nurse, Chris Finch, Matt Brazzi, who was the head coach then, brought me in. Lucky for me, he did not know me. And so then from there, just really through the success of what we were doing and building in RGV, and through my experience with the Rockets, got on the radar for the Phoenix Suns, and they had an opening for their head G League coach where they hired me as the head coach, and I brought Nick down here with me. We went up to Northern Arizona, led the league in call-ups, set the franchise record for wins, and kind of had one of the better offenses, that the G League's had, for some time at that particular point. And then when Igor Kokoshkov got the head job in Phoenix, another lucky step for me, he hired me with the Phoenix Suns. And, unfortunately he was let go after a year. And, at that particular time too, I just got a random phone call from Penny Hardaway. So, he asked me if I'd be interested in a spot on his staff. And to make a long story short, I'm trying to condense this, but, I'm here in Memphis, blessed to be going on my second season, and I've enjoyed every minute that I've been here. So it's been a wild ride, a wild journey. But, similar to Ryan's and similar to Nick's, right, it's been one where, none of the guys on this call have found comfort in one location, just been able to sit back and soak everything up and learn, and just been a part of, one organization that just brings their guys all the way through. We've all had to go out on our own journeys and kind of come back, and we're kind of a group of misfits here. To me, we've always been outside right the door, you know what I mean? Looking for the door in, trying to get in. And we've been the guys at the Starbucks sitting there just waiting for an opportunity. And to see these other guys on the call get their opportunity and step into it and knock it out of the park, I'm not surprised at all, because they're extremely talented, and I'm just excited to be a part of their club, if you will. So yeah, that's my story.
And for you, Coach Friedman, obviously Coach Toppert just brought up a lot of topics that you've been involved with him through a lot of different places he's been at. Take us through that. You're now with Charlotte as a player development coach. How'd you get there?
The first thing I want to say is the comment that Cody made about the guys waiting at the Starbucks. It's pretty incredible to hear that, and then just reminisce on over these last 5 years, literally being one of those guys, sitting in a Starbucks in Chicago during the combine, taking Cody's lead of the art of networking and just having a conversation and being genuine. It's pretty cool to just, think about that statement and now where you're at. But yeah, my journey is interesting, I guess. I started playing Division III basketball at a small school in Lewiston, Maine called Bates College. It's part of the NESCAC, and played there for 2 years, but it was always hurt, and kind of fell out of love with the game in a way. And so I took a year off from school and worked for a startup company based in Boston, and just was really evaluating what I wanted to do, whether or not I'd always been so set on being, I was a Division III guy, wanted to play low level overseas basketball, and it was just that was always my goal. And I wanted to, was it worth it? Do I want to change my mindset and get into the business of basketball? So I was doing my research this year and kind of just training some kids in the Boston area on the side while I was still working out and coaching some small AAU teams, and made this decision to transfer to the University of Miami. I had been watching their program and how they were on the rise. And, kind of my whole dream in life was to work for the Boston Celtics, and Coach Jim Larinaga, his son being Jay Larinaga, and just put all the connections together and took a leap of faith and got into the school and, hit up the director of basketball operations, Adam Fisher, to see if I could be an undergrad manager. And the next thing you know, I'm stepping foot into the University of Miami practice facility, and I just fell in love with player development. And during that year as an undergrad manager, I was just working out all the guys on the side while doing your managerial tasks like laundry and so forth, and doing the grunt work and really having to check my ego. Even as a Division III player, you're always so used to having somebody rebound for you or something. And, now you're on the opposite spectrum, and it really, kind of punches you in the gut, right? So I had to learn, and in that year I really fell in love with the process, but at the same time I was being very ambitious, and was coaching an AAU team on the side called the Florida Flash alongside a guy by the name of Lance Tejada. And we had 7 Division I prospects, one being John Collins. So when John started to blow up, became kind of a conflict of interest with my being a manager. And I ended up having to be asked to leave the program, but I still had to finish my undergrad. And in that next year, that's when I met Cody. So I actually joined on with that prep school team as an assistant coach at Elevate and was helping Cody train. And that summer, Cody was working with Terry Rozier. So I helped out with that pre-draft process. And then from there, that AAU team dissolved, so I was able to come back as a grad assistant at the U, worked as a grad assistant, and then headed into that summer. Cody got a job with the Rio Grande Valley Vipers, so I took over the pre-draft that he was running and turned it into my own company called The Preparation, and ran that for about 4 years while I was going through the G League, and had, Torian Prince, Abdul Nader, Dennis Smith Jr., Kevin Knox, Tremont Waters. We had a really good group of guys over those years, and again, continuing to build my love for player development. But after that graduate assistant year, I actually get on with the Rio Grande Valley Vipers as an intern. So that was 16, 17. And we had an awesome year, and we had a very small staff, and working for Cody and Matt Brazzi and Joseph Blair, they're just the ultimate example of what, giving the people underneath you power and responsibility really does, and giving them a voice. And they let me coach, and they let me get my experience, and I really grew. We went to a G League Finals that year. We lost to Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet. And then from there, I ended up getting an assistant coaching job with the Maine Red Claws, which was a dream come true. And right before the season's supposed to start in Maine, I get a call from Cody Toppert being like, "Yo, bro, I just became the head coach for the Northern Arizona Suns. I need you to come with me and be my offensive coordinator." And my head is spinning, and Danny Ainge is telling me I should stay, but at the same time, I know what the experience of being an O coordinator in the G League can really do for your life. And again, I take a leap of faith to join Cody in Northern Arizona, and we have a great year. We have a top 3 offense in the G League, 5 call-ups, most wins in franchise history, and it was just an unbelievable year. And then from there, I actually get an opportunity to go back to Maine as the associate head coach. I was their associate head coach last season, and then again just kind of keep progressing. We don't have the greatest season, but it was a year of true growth for me. I think losing does a ton for you as a coach and really builds character, and just kind of hit a breakthrough and was able to get in with the Charlotte Hornets organization as their two-way coach for head coach James Borrego. And now I'm in Charlotte full-time. And just really, again, just hearing Cody's story and, remembering those times of sitting in those Starbucks and trying to just, beat at the door and bust into this industry it's really an unbelievable feeling.
Absolutely. I think one thing that's special about basketball is there's so many different avenues, so many different levels of it. All you guys have played or coached in different levels, whether it be overseas, college, high school, pros, different levels. Now, let's just talk about that. I mean, for you, Coach Pannone, you've coached in many different countries across the world. You're an American in the G League system. Just what's it like? What's kind of the difference between the different levels and just coaching in different countries?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously some of the biggest differences between international basketball and American basketball is the way that the game is played. Everything internationally is about the team and team concepts and team flow, and it's where obviously a lot in American basketball, especially at the G League level, is a little bit more individualized in terms of what the players think. The G League is kind of the junior college of professional basketball. No one really wants to be there except me. I really wanted to be the head coach. That was kind of a dream come true when Trajan and Griff took a chance on me out of nowhere. So it's a different mindset. In Europe, every game matters. You can sign a 3-year deal as a head coach and get fired in the preseason of your first year for losing too much in the preseason. So to go from there where every game matters, every game is live or die, to the G League where the mentality isn't every game matters, it's a next game mentality, is definitely different. And, I think there's some things in the perception of the G League that I don't actually agree with because winning does matter. It matters everywhere. At the end of the day, the guys that get called up are on the teams that are winning, not the teams that aren't winning. And then there's a language barrier concept. And I think what you begin to realize is, right, basketball is global, and being able to speak, with players that don't speak any English or don't speak much English, to be able to get your concepts and understanding across, I think helps you as a coach. It helps you learn more to speak in digestible sound bites. And oftentimes I think in coaching we can overspeak and in a sense over communicate instead of learning how to speak in those digestible sound bites. And so it was a really unique experience. You know, I think coaching internationally is the best thing I could have done in terms of growing as a coach. I think it gave me a totally different perspective on concepts and preparation and the way that the game is played as opposed to college and the NBA.
I'll stick with you real quick on one other part, and that's the aspect of just kind of find talent. We see in the NBA every year, the top European players, where do we draft them? Guys like Luka obviously pan out, others don't. What does it take? What does it take for a guy from Europe or another country to come to America and pan out? Something like Luka, or just even this last in the league for a little bit.
I mean, I think it's the same thing as it takes American players. I mean, I think the mentality that Americans have about international players is that they're soft and they're not athletic. And, for every player that doesn't pan out, right, there's 5 American players that didn't pan out either. So I think the mentality is oftentimes because of Darko and other international guys that didn't pan out. Well, there's a ton of American players that also were drafted extremely high that didn't pan out. And I think, right, but players are the same across the world, international and Americans. And a lot of times for guys that get drafted to make it, all 3 of us were involved in the draft process, is guys need royal jelly. Guys need love. Guys need a chance. They need a coach that believes in them. There's a handful of players in the NBA that you can drop onto any team and they're going to be super successful regardless of the coach, the system, the style, the opportunity. For everyone else, there's, guys need someone that believes in them. They need coaches that give them a chance, that give them an opportunity to play, that give an opportunity to breathe passion and love of the game into them. And, it's something that Nick talked about even as a Division III player, right? Like at some point he lost the love of the game. And, I think that's a big part of what we do as coaching is, right, we have to be inspiration. We're in the inspiration business. And the mentality for an international player that it takes something different than an American player, it's just optics, right? It's not exactly true. All players are the same. They need confidence. They need a coach that believes in them. They need someone to give them a chance. There's a lot of luck in making it in this league on the coaching side and on the player side. Right system, right coach, right opportunity. It's why we see guys that failed on one team, but they go to another coach in another situation and performing incredibly well. And a lot of that is getting the royal jelly.
Absolutely. And Coach Toppert, I mean, all besides your year with Phoenix Suns, I mean, your job kind of has been helping guys get to the next level. Prep school, getting guys to college, getting college guys to the pro level, G League getting to the NBA level. When you see that, what does it take to get a guy to the next level? And the end goal of it, what's it like seeing the guy be able to succeed and make it to the next level?
Yeah, to me, the thing, and just kind of piggybacking on what Ryan's saying, is the difference between a guy in the G League and a guy on an NBA roster is that much. Mm-hmm. The difference between a guy on an NBA roster and a guy in the rotation is that much. The difference between a guy in the rotation, like your 4th and 5th starter, is like that much. And the difference between those guys and your top 3 players is massive. Like the best players are so much better than everybody else, and then it's just everybody else. And the way I describe it is you want to be a round peg in a round hole, right? The higher the level as you move up, right, there's a job description that's specifically fit because as teams are put together through the draft process and all these things, it's a jigsaw puzzle, right? You don't want too many overlapping jobs because that's not what creates a deadly offense. Now, obviously, or defense. But obviously, we want guys who can play multiple positions, right? So the caveat is that when you're on the floor, there's always a role, right? So there's a 3-and-D guy, right? There's a rebounder, a designated roller, right? You don't want your designated roller popping and thinking he's a 3-point shooter, right? You don't want your 3-and-D guy thinking that he's going to be a playmaker in the pick and roll, right? So there's a bunch of different things, but the best way to put it is, right, whatever that job description is, right, that's a round hole. You want to be a round peg, right? So I've got my guys here trained to know, right, literally, I'll go up to Lance Thomas. If I say round peg, he says round hole, right, because he needs to understand that he needs to keep his game simple and do what we need him to do, right, which isn't always what he might want to do, but it's what's going to be in his best interest to maximize not only his role and position within our team, but also his ability to showcase what he's about, as it pertains to like the next level. And, the best way to also put it into perspective, I coached $6 million All-Americans in the G League, right? Not a single one of those guys coming out of high school thought they were going to be on my team in the G League. Not one. They all thought that the royal red carpet was rolled out for them, right? And it was just going to be, hey, just waltz on into the NBA and, here's going to be $100 million. We're just going to give it to you, and the world is going to be, at your feet. And that's not how it is, right? Because at the end of the day, it's Hunger Games basketball, right? Kill or be killed, because everybody is coming for you. And to me, that's the biggest thing that guys need to understand, right? The minute you think you've made it, you have it, right? Until you've signed a max contract, you haven't made it, right? Until then, there's always something more you can do. When you've signed the max and it's all about just doing the mathematics on what's the most we can pay you, right? You haven't arrived. You haven't made it. And even then, right, you ask a guy like Devin Booker, like I worked with him to like reverse engineer his career type of deal, right? I do that with a lot of guys, right, to kind of figure out, well, what are your goals? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, right? A dude like that has major focus, right, to the point where he's talking about, hey, he wants, to win multiple championships, but even beyond that, he wants to build a statue of him out from the arena, put his jersey in the rafters. You want to be an all-star, you want to be a perennial all-star, because, that type of stuff, takes extreme dedication and extreme sacrifice. A lot of people don't understand those. Nick and I coached Anthony Bennett in the G League. And to be honest with you, we cut him, right? So now think about that. Guy was number 1 overall draft pick. And one point in time, he has to take a call from me and realize, oh, yeah, he's no longer going to be on the team. We're going to trade him to Danny Ainge for, a washing machine. And, like, to me, it's one of those things where, like, what does that say about him? That's not the point. The point is that he's still a talented kid, a very good basketball player, right? But the point is, if you want to not just get to the NBA, but you want to figure out how to stick, right, you have to have these varying habits and these varying degrees of what you're willing to do in order to get there and stay there. And you have to be willing to be pliable, like my daughter's Play-Doh, right? Because you've got to fit into that role that they give you. And if you don't, that's going to be the quickest way to find the door. And I think that, to me, is perhaps even the most important thing when you're talking to these guys, right? And a lot of them, it's sometimes hard to understand it until they reach some variation of rock bottom. But the problem what they don't understand is, right, like Ryan was talking about how, right, he loves being in the G League. Hell, we loved being in the G League. But still, he wants to get out, right? So the running joke in the G League is, what does it have in common with prison, right? Everybody wants out. And that's whether you're a trainer, a strength coach, a player. And so when these other guys start to get satisfied with where they're at, that's when Shaq Harrison is coming, and he's coming for your job. And it doesn't matter that he only started 5 games for us in the G League, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he went to Tulsa. It doesn't matter that he paid $100 to go to a G League tryout, because he's ready and he's an NBA player. And now he's established himself as having not just a job, but a career, right? Not just a 10-day, but you want a 10-year. Like, that's what you want to do. You want longevity in the game.
I do want to stick with you on that part too, because you mentioned the part, as you know, primarily interviews I do with top high school guys. And as we see, when you look at rankings from 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of those guys do not pan out. Either they're not even in the NBA, they're in G League. And a lot of people also praise those guys as being the future, the top guys of the class, whatnot. When you see that, what does it take for the guys that do pan out to ultimately end up panning out and last in the NBA for a long time?
Yeah, the big thing is, number one, when you go to an organization, like, you just have to have complete surrender and buy-in. You have to surrender to what the front office and, the executive, all the are expecting out of you and what they want and what they see for you. And then you have to surrender to what the coach is telling you. And oftentimes, like, as you start getting paid, those become the difficult things to do, right? Surrender to coaching, surrender to the process, and great things come in return, right? And when you see guys who have gone through the wash and come out the other end really well, like a Hassan Whiteside, right, who was on the brink of a destroyed career but now finds it and gets a max contract, right? It was when he realized that he needed to surrender to what Eric Spoelstra is saying, right, or to what's happening, within that organization and what their expectations are, that now he can maximize who he is, right? And I think a lot of times too, guys put false expectations on themselves. And they think, hey, like, you see it's not as seen on TV because there's so much other stuff that goes into it, right? And at the end of the day, if you don't take care of business on the court, if you don't take care of your body, if you don't have championship and winning habits just in your life, it's going to be hard to maximize who you are and what you're about.
Couldn't agree more. And for you, Coach Friedman, you obviously have a role as player development. That's a word that we hear constantly about the NBA, player development, especially for teams rebuilding, building up a program. Talk about that role. What does it take, and what exactly do you have to do to get guys ready to grow into becoming great players for the roster at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think one thing we really neglect in describing player development at the NBA level is that it's a lot of psychological development more so than actual skill development. You know, for us, you know, Cody, Ryan, the on-court stuff comes naturally in terms of being able to teach the game and getting a guy to, you know, build on specific skills, whether it's the mechanics of his jump shot or his ability to make reads at the rim and so forth. But at the end of the day, if you can't do these two things psychologically, if you can't adjust your ego and understand that correction is not criticism, and you can't have the power to be in the moment, to be present, and if you're concerned about the future or the past, you're going to fail. And like Cody said, like, it's about eating in the now. It's about producing in the now and being focused on the moment and taking advantage of the moment. And we had two guys, an example here in Charlotte with Jalen McDaniels and Caleb Martin, who are two assignment guys who spent significant time in the G League. You know, Caleb spent 28 games, Jalen spent 30 games. And in that entire time frame, you know, there were battles psychologically with these kids. There were times where the buy-in may have never been there, but they were able to snap out of it and understand that what I was saying was never an assault of their character. It was about genuinely helping them achieve their dreams. And when guys can understand that from a coaching perspective, that's coachability. And when you can do that, you're going to succeed. It's a very simple equation. It's either going to do it or you're not. And like Cody said, like, we've been around guys that were McDonald's All-Americans, guys that were never, ever expected to be in the position of being a G League player. But it's about, in that moment when you're there, are you going to reflect on your past and only remember the fact that you were one of the best in the country, and that, oh, it's bull crap that I'm here and, you know, I don't have to be a role player to make it, you know? Or are you going to understand, like, man, being a role player in the NBA is a pretty good job, and it means I could still have a very fruitful, successful, creative career as a basketball player. And if you can understand that, then that's how you're going to define your success. And Jalen McDaniels and Caleb Martin, like Cody said, in terms of his describing the progression of a role player, there was this much difference between those guys and some of the guys in our rotation. And instead of just sulking about being down in the G League, they got better and better every game. They progressed. Every game they're getting that much better at their shooting, their rim decision-making, their defensive ability, their present moment awareness. And when it was their time to shine and their time to play, they took full advantage and haven't looked back. And now they've turned themselves into guys that couldn't even crack a rotation. You know, were considered 14th, 15th guys on our roster to being in our top 10 and going into this next season as guys that we're trying to build with. And because of that psychological development, that's how they were able to succeed. You know, they got better on the court, but being able to really master that psychological edge and that mindset development is huge.
And last part you just said there, I mean, when you have a roster primarily built of young players looking to who to truly keep at their core, it's a lot of guys that have to fight for that last spot. And one of those guys, Devontae Graham, who probably should have been in that top 3 most improved, not won it. He's a guy that was a second-round pick. Now starts for you guys, is a huge piece of your guys' future now. What does it take for a guy like Devontae Graham to separate himself, become that true core piece now, as opposed to maybe other guys that don't necessarily make them end up finding themselves on a different team sometime?
Well, he did exactly what I just referenced. It's that present moment awareness mentality, and he's another guy who spent a significant time in the G League, and he dominated. You know, he did what he was supposed to do, and he used it as an environment to just be able to work on him and work on winning. You know, being a winning player, being the best version of himself. And honestly, if you go back and watch the film of him in Greensboro, he was doing exactly what he was doing in Greensboro in Charlotte this year. You know, he was playing very similarly. You know, it was just his pull-up game from 3, his ability to make other players better. Like, he was doing that at the G League level. He gave us fits. You know, we couldn't do anything against him when I was in Maine. And it's so awesome to see him, you know, be an example of a guy that just dominated where he was at, regardless if it was the G League, and it translating at the NBA level.
Couldn't agree more. For you, Coach Pannone, I mean, you're out there at Erie. Once again, that's a team that we know the big flash guys are the main team at New Orleans. They have Zahn. They have all those big pieces, but there's a lot of young guys. We have a guy like Nikhil Alexander-Walker. That's a big component, but there's also a guy like Lonzo Ball there. There's a lot of other young players that are established. How do you kind of plan to develop them and to whatever they can possibly become long-term in the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the goal is, I think what our Pelicans coaches do such a great job of is loving on the players. I mean, there's, Joe Boylan, who's the director of player development for the Pelicans, and the Pelicans player development coaches and assistant coaches have done a really good job of pouring into those players and, consistently pushing them and holding them accountable. And we got Nikhil Alexander-Walker for 2 games, and then he got injured. Otherwise, we would have seen him more. But I think that's something they've done a really good job. And obviously, as you can see, that the young core has really developed. And Fred Vinson and Joe Boylan, Jamel McMillan, and the coaching staff there just did a really good job of consistently working with those guys and building strong relationships with them and getting buy-in.
No doubt. And for you, Coach Toppert, I mean, you have now dealt with NBA players at Memphis, and you will continue to do that over the next few years. When you look at knowing what it takes to make the NBA, you're right there with them. Tell us like your one advice. What's your one biggest thing you're going to tell a guy on your roster if they want to make the league? This is what they have to do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously to me, it's lose yourself in the process of chasing the best version of who you can possibly be, right? Don't measure yourself on the scale based on the guy next to you, based on somebody you saw on TV, based on somebody who's blown up on social media, right? We all have our own scale, right? We all have our own, level of like max player you can possibly be, right? Just don't leave any stone unturned. Don't leave anything left on the table, right? Because if you maximize, squeeze every last ounce of juice out of whatever fruit you are, right, you're going to give yourself the best chance. Does that still mean you're going to make it? Not necessarily. I mean, it's very hard to make it at the highest levels and to become a, rotation player in the NBA for 10 plus years. Very difficult to do, right? But at least you got to give yourself the best chance, right? And to me, that also in losing yourself in the process, the way I look at it is this way, right? Like if you chase a goal of yours, right, and you're just so focused on that goal, that's like trying to get to home base without touching first, second, and third, right? Like you lose sight of the fact that you're going to have to go through these other stages to get to your ultimate goal. And so instead of, chasing that end goal, in which case a lot of times it ends up getting further away, right? You just need to chase what you can do via the process that's ultimately going to get you that end result. The way I equate it, though, from a basketball standpoint, is when you go to the free throw line and you are result driven, right? And you say, I've got to make this. I've got to make these free throws. Like make these. Or even worse, you say, don't miss, right? That's the same as saying, like, I got to make it to the NBA or don't fail, right? Like if you've got a high reputation, don't fail. Those are the ones you don't make. Those are the ones you're going to miss, right? Because your whole mental processing is off. When you go to the free throw line and you're focused on your routine, right, your follow through, your rotation on your shot, whatever it is, like based on your process, everybody's got a different one. Those are the ones you make, right? So you have to be process driven versus result driven. If you're process driven, then ultimately the results come, right? It's just like, if the more you chase wins, the further away they get. The more you chase development, the more wins that come, right? So it's kind of like it's a catch-22. A lot of guys have trouble with that stuff. So that would be my biggest advice that goes across positions and job descriptions and all these different things.
Coach Friedman, and we kind of just obviously discussed the development aspect. And I believe it's either 2 or 3 years now of having the two-way contract. That's a big thing, I think, for a lot of teams. You're the one that kind of handles those guys. You really work a lot with those guys. How important was it to have the NBA establish the two-way contract?
I think it's great. Just being able to add 2 roster spots and, take chances on guys that, maybe borderline NBA dudes and putting them in a setting where you can get a true evaluation and see their, competitive winning character in the G League and see them grow as men and as players on a daily basis. I can't speak highly enough about the positivity of adding the position. I just think it's always interesting to evaluate what translates most. The biggest thing for me this year was I had always been a G League assistant and always had been in the G League. And this year I was living the life of a two-way where, you are an assistant coach in the NBA and then you're spending significant time in the G League and you feel somewhat removed, because you're spending so much time in Greensboro, and it will wear on you psychologically because you feel like you've made the step to be in the NBA and you're not quite there, and you get to resonate with the player's mindset and understand that that's a grind. It's something that as a two-way coach and adding that position to an NBA team is absolutely necessary because you have to be the bigger man and you have to be that mentor and that guidance counselor, if you will, to help keep these guys mentally right and in the moment. And if they don't do that, like I said, it's really hard for them to succeed. I think a great example of somebody who mastered that mindset was PJ Dozier, who's now with the Denver Nuggets. When he was in Maine, he barely got any days with the Boston Celtics, but he took care of business and he improved significantly from year to year when he was in Oklahoma City to then Maine. He did what he was supposed to do. When he got his opportunity in Boston, he played pretty well in his last game against the Washington Wizards, but didn't do enough in an NBA role and really didn't have a true NBA evaluations, had to bounce back around as a two-way, gets picked up as Denver, takes care of business again in the Windy City, and then once he gets a shot in the NBA with the Denver Nuggets, he just never looks back, and a lot of that has to do with, guys like us, in these positions to just be able to be that light and guide them, and keep them mentally in the moment. So I can't speak highly enough about the two-way player contract and the addition of the role of a two-way coach in the NBA. I think it's very necessary.
And Coach Pannone, as a G League coach, it brings a lot of inconsistencies for you throughout the course of the year. I know Zion cheated pretty well. He might be playing with you one day. The Pelicans, guys swinging rosters constantly. How as a coach do you maintain a roster, maintain a game plan, not really knowing when a guy's going to be with you or not with you?
Cody's probably better to ask because he won a lot more games than I did.
Oh, come on.
I think part of it, right, is exactly what we preach in player development. When we're working with guys that all three of us have done throughout the season that are near the end of the bench or aren't in the rotation, you got to stay ready. You've got to stay ready. When your time comes, you got to stay ready to be prepared to play really well. And I think that's the mindset that you have to have your team, because you can go from not playing 5 games in a row to 30 minutes. It's just the reality of it. And I think having that mindset for 12 players, consistently pushing them, developing them, keeping them ready, having the mentality and the relationship with them to, hey, man, somebody's going to be injured. We had 11 players miss 82 games due to injury. Somebody's going to be injured. Somebody's going to get a call up. Something's going to happen, and you've got to mentally be ready. And Nick talked about being a guidance counselor. We've got to keep every player on your G League roster mentally engaged and ready. And I think a big part of that is a relationship you develop. What's standard is guys that don't play more than 15, 20 minutes have a workout that night after the game or have a workout the next day, which might be an off day. And one thing I try to do is make sure every off day for every player that worked, I was at the workout. I was there. I was rebounding. I was screening. I was rolling. I was passing. Our assistant coaches ran the workout, and I wanted the player to know a few things. One, I believed in them. There are no off days. It's not an off day for you. It's not an off day for me as the head coach. I'm not out with my family. I'm here in the gym for you. Two, that there's nothing beneath any of us. As the head coach, I'm not coming in to run the workout. Your skill coach is still running the workout. I'm here to pass and rebound and mop the floor and do everything. So you see, right, that you have to be able to adapt your role for what the situation is. And then 3, that they know I'm the hardest worker on the team at all times. And I think pushing your guys to have that mentality to mentally stay ready, but also them knowing for you as a head coach that, look, man, yeah, you're not playing right now, but I'm still here in the gym with you. I'm still rebounding for you. I'm still screening for you. It's not over. And, I do think that's one thing our guys did a good job of throughout all the injuries and the call-ups. And we saw guys like Vito Brown that Nick had in Maine that, he's been 3 years in the G League. He's been traded by 2 teams, cut by another team. And, for us, he was a go-to starter and an average 15 points a game. And so I think having that next man up, that next man mentality and really trying to have it amongst 12 players is extremely important. And then as a coach, it's what challenges you, because you can develop your entire game plan, with Zylan Cheatham guarding somebody, and that's the focus of 2 days in practice. He gets a call up, now he's gone. Okay, bang. What are you going to do next? How do you adjust as a coach? How do you react? So I think that's, one of the beautiful things about the G League. And that's why I think you see a lot of G League coaches having success in the NBA is they've seen everything. Like there's nothing you could throw at a G League coach that they haven't seen.
And Coach Toppert, let's bring it back to high school a little bit. You were at the prep level. That's a new thing. Obviously, there's tons of them now. It's a big go-to thing for high school guys. You being a prep school coach before, trying to get these guys to college. Now as a college coach, when you're recruiting, how valuable do you see it when a guy's a part of a prep school, playing a national schedule, playing the best of the best? How much more appealing does it make a prospect to you?
Yeah, the higher level competition that you can seek out and play, that only is going to benefit you because at the higher levels you go up, right? Those are good. That level of competition becomes the standard, like the norm, right? So, if you stay inside your own little bubble and you dominate inside your own little bubble, sometimes that's unavoidable, right? If you're at a small high school in the middle of nowhere, whatever the case may be, right? That's unavoidable. But wherever you have an opportunity to go play against great players, play against better players, what it does is it just kind of gives you a good punch in the mouth. It lets you understand like what the level is going to be like, if you're able to get to that next stage in your career. And to me, I think in doing those things, it's ultimately it serves you more down the road than maybe ultimate. It's not like an instant gratification thing, right? But if you can go get into pro runs, if you can go work out with European guys, if you can, do these types of things or play a national schedule, play at a elite powerhouse prep school, or if you can just go down the block and seek out, a kid who's home from the summer who, plays Division I basketball, whatever it is, it's just going to benefit you down the road because, the players continue to get bigger, faster, stronger. As the levels move up, the weakest link, it becomes not that weak. And, for guys to go and seek out high-level competition, I think that's only going to be for their betterment and their development.
Coach Friedman, we just got done talking about the two-way contracts, how valuable they are. Coaches and GMs are always trying to figure out who's going to fill those 2 spots. What are they ultimately looking for? They're looking for guys that kind of fit a position or kind of a role that they want on the team, or what are they kind of looking like to find what 2 young prospects they want on the two-way spots?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, it comes down to 2 things in my mind. Whether or not you can fit a role, which then translates to whether or not you can help our team win. If we've got injuries, if we've got guys that are just simply not, like I've been talking about, valuing present moment awareness and maximizing their role up top, can we plug these guys in right away? And can they just, add to that winning culture? A perfect example of that is Lugens Dort in Oklahoma City. An ideal 2-way contract guy, and he really fits the mold of the second most important thing that you see, that is upside and potential, right? Is there room for growth in this kid? With this kid, can he outplay his role if we get him in the right situation with the right development? So I think it's that winning mindset combined with upside and potential that we're truly evaluating at the highest level when we're trying to look at these roles.
Without a doubt. Coach Pannone, during this whole quarantine break, big stuff kind of came out, and that was the new G League Select team. Top high school guys going to that team. You as a coach now, what's your thoughts on this, and how exactly is this going to be incorporated into the G League, and what exactly is it?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity, number one, for the G League and for the high school players. It gives them opportunity to be coached by NBA coaches and former NBA players like Brian Shaw, and gives them an opportunity to focus on basketball, which is what they want. It's why they're coming to the G League. If they want the college experience, great, go to college. And I think it's a great opportunity for the G League because it's going to continue to bring more notoriety, I think more ESPN games, more scouts to our games. And so it's going to give other guys additional chance at exposure and also to live the professional life where more of their games are on ESPN and on TV, which gives their family and friends a chance to see them. And I think it continues to enhance the professionalism of the G League. And I think it's also going to force the G League to continue to improve the standards of the G League, which is something that we're seeing with the Players Association. And so I think anything that continues to enhance the entire league, enhance the exposure for the league is positive. And so I think it'll be a really good opportunity for the young players and get a chance to evaluate them playing against men and against guys that were also the top high school players in the country. So I mean, it's no longer that they're stepping into college, and oftentimes they may be the best players there. They're stepping into a league with guys that were all great high school players and college players.
And to stay with you real quick, a thing I keep hearing a lot of people are hearing about is these guys will probably be the 8, 9 youngest players in the G League, as well as probably making the most money in the G League as well. What do the other players in the G League kind of feel about these teenagers coming in and obviously kind of having the NBA goals for them?
I mean, that's going to be the interesting part of it, right? Is it become jealousy or motivation? It's something Coach Toppert spoke about is, right, staying focused on the process and the process of where you want to get, where you want to go. And I think it happens to all of us, especially when we're younger. We're so focused on where other people are in their career and what they get and why they get it and why don't we get it, instead of focused on ourself, and how do we push ourselves? How do we progress? Okay, we may not get that opportunity, but does that drive us? Does that push us? Does that make us work harder, work more? Right? Or are we going to sit back and be like, well, that's not fair. Why does he get that? Why don't I get that? And so I think it's going to be an interesting mentality to see amongst the G League players. And I think you're going to see guys that are grinders that use it as extra motivation to work harder, to push himself even more, to try to get those opportunities financially in the NBA and in high-level Europe. And then you're going to see some guys, and it's just a personality that they're too focused on what other people get and why they get it and how they got it.
And for you, Coach Toppert, last season, I mean, obviously it didn't go as well, but there was James Wiseman, a guy that obviously would have had a G League opportunity if that was something there. They also have W.C.T coming in now, obviously had that option as well. Those guys are just talented enough to make that roster. When you're going through that, you look at these players, what allows them to make the G League kind of team? What kind of separates them to be able to become a G League kind of prospects?
Well, I'm going to take the opposite, obviously, right, approach from what Ryan's saying, right? And everything he said in terms of like the coaching, all that type of stuff, that's not what I'm content with. What he talked about is, right, evaluation of them against grown men, right? From a organizational perspective, as an NBA organization, incredibly valuable, right? See the reaction against adversity, incredibly valuable. From the player perspective, in terms of protecting draft stock, extremely risky, because as any of these guys on this phone will tell you, right, and you talked about it, right, these guys are going to be the youngest players in the league, the highest paid players in the league. And there's going to be some other guys making $35,000 who have a little bit something to say about that $500,000 going to this 18-year-old, right? Not yet, buddy, right? We talked about it being the Hunger Games. So there's going to be a big, right, crosshairs and a target on their back. And I think that the league recognized that, because if you just put together an entire team of high school kids, they get the floor wiped with them. And, to me, when I look at it, I look at it and I think to myself, I'm like, well, if I'm like a top 5 rated player, right, I could probably go sit in a ditch for 8 months and still get drafted, right? I don't even need to play. But obviously I'm going to miss out on game reps. I'm going to miss out on development, right? So that's why I think the University of Memphis is obviously a great option for these kids, because again, if we say that we're going to be process driven, we need to be process driven as players in order to maximize who we are. We're going to do the same thing in this program, right? We are chasing the process of helping our guys develop, and we believe that wins will come from that. But at the end of the day, we're playing a progressive NBA style. We're teaching progressive NBA concepts, and our whole player development plan is going to be the exact same thing you're going to see with the Hornets, with the Pelicans. It's the same. That's how we're doing it. We're running an NBA program at the college level. Now, from a player perspective, I think you mitigate some of the risk associated with going against some of these 27, 28-year-old men who, quite honestly, are going to outplay you. They absolutely are. There's just no way around it. I don't care how talented these guys are, right? None of them are the type of guys who are going to go in rookie year. They would be averaging 20 points a game their rookie year. That's not their identity, right? So they're going to take their lumps. And so my question is, who would you rather be playing on some random, February afternoon? A guy who is on his last leg, cut from 2 different NBA teams, has had a couple of 10 days, right? 27 years old, thirsty for one more opportunity to prove that he can stick. Because a lot of times, like we mentioned, the difference between getting there and staying there is it just might be right time, right opportunity, right system, right coach, right? Or, some other kids your age, closer to your age, probably not anywhere near as talented as you, that you're going to be able to, showcase what you're about, on national television, on ESPN, once COVID gets by, in front of 17, 18,000 fans, right? And you want to grow a brand element. You want to get, you want to grow a following. You want to, right, become somebody who can be, have off the court endorsements, things like that. I mean, there's other things to factor in. But when it comes to everything that Ryan said, yeah, excellent coaching, excellent development. From an NBA evaluation standpoint, I'd be thirsty for that, right? Because you might say, oh, man, like I'm watching, Anthony Edwards go against, some random guy in an early season game from a low major conference school, and he scores 25 on them. That's a hard evaluation. But if he can go score 25 on, Dwayne Bacon or whatever, or one of the Martin twins, right now we're really looking at something, right? And that's really something to look at. But again, the whole draft process again too, having been in the pre-draft process, as all of us have been on this call, right? You want to maximize draft stock. You don't have to wait till the second contract to make money anymore. Number 1 overall pick, that's a $40 million contract. But I'll tell you what, if you're supposed to be the number 1 overall pick and now you drop to number 5 or number 6 or number 8, cost yourself a lot of money now. It's a lot of money on the line there. So, there's risks associated with both.
And I think one of the big attractions for this G League route too is the money aspect. They're making money, and that's something that colleges started to advance on. Hopefully the same that following year they start making some kind of money. Is that what the college needs to do to possibly get the guys to keep coming to college as opposed to looking at the G League route?
Yeah, I mean, you got the name, image, and likeness thing. I think that's fair. That's good. That's something that I think kind of levels that playing field. At the end of the day, to me, right, $500,000, right, that's short money, right? $150 million, that's long money. So everything that you do with your career should be a chess move on the board if we're talking about these top-level guys, right? If we're talking about them, every move that you make on the board is a chess move to try to get in position, right, to ultimately get to the $150 million, $300 million mark, right? If you're one of these top guys. Because nobody, and I had to have this conversation in the Phoenix Suns organization, right? They're not my expectations. If you draft a guy number 1, right, you're not expecting anything less than we're going to win championships. He's going to be a perennial all-star. We're going to, build a statue of him outside the arena. Like, no, the expectations that come with the number 1 draft pick are massive. They're not my expectations, right? They're just the expectations. Because nobody's drafting a guy at number 1 and say, hey, man, we just want to get ourselves a guy who can, be a starter for 8 years, 10 years. No, nobody wants a 10-year starter at the number 1 slot, right? You know what I mean? Right? Not that you take that over something worse, but you think this guy's going to be a superstar. That's why you're taking him number 1. Again, that's number 1, right? So to me, again, if you chase short money, but ultimately, like, you chase the 500,000, but then it doesn't go well for you, you don't play well in the games, right? And you could have been the number 1 overall pick, and now you're the number 5 pick. Well, that 500,000 wasn't worth it because you just cost yourself $10 million.
Absolutely. For you, Coach Friedman, you are an NBA organization. You're with the Hornets. What are their thoughts on this new G League select team?
I love the concept. I think it's great, but I think, there's also the element of, and you'll see it in the bubble right now. You have a lot of guys that are outperforming their expectations. And I think a lot of that has to do with just change of setting and lack of fans. It's a lot more of a relaxed game. You don't have that environment, that rowdy environment, that crowd environment, and that's typically what the G League is. There's not a ton of pressure in a lot of ways when you're playing, other than, just the fact that you're going against higher level players in the G League. I think from a competition standpoint and evaluation standpoint, like Cody said, if you've got a guy like Jalen Green, really holding his own and outplaying a Caleb Martin, that says a lot about the kid. on the other hand, I don't think it's very hard to replicate that college basketball environment, that environment of performing at a high level under such high stakes against hundreds of thousands of fans. And I think there's something to be said about evaluation at the college basketball level that you just can't forget. So I think that's something that prospects and guys really have to evaluate once they're making that decision. And I also think that if you do find the right programs with the right player development schemes and concepts and curriculums that are NBA based, you know, it's something to evaluate, you know, just as much as going to this new program in the G League. I think it's a very new, great positive route in addition to the league. But I also think that prospects need to really weigh the decision of going to college, because at the end of the day, it's a big part of character development. And guys have to understand, I know that there's going to be a lot, it's going to be probably a little bit more comfortable, and there's going to be a lot of resources. And like you said, Zach, guys are getting paid, but this grind is not easy. And it's not easy to go against these kids. You got to think about it like, you know, us with the Greensboro Swarm, we didn't necessarily have a great season, but we've got guys that played at Duke, that played at NC State, that played at Arizona, McDonald's All-Americans, guys chomping at the bit to get back in the NBA. And it's not a cakewalk, and they're grown men, you know. So you can get exposed at a high level if you're not ready, and if you walk in this thing with the wrong mindset, for sure.
You also brought up a point that I don't think a lot of people have looked at, and that's the fans aspect. That is a great point. And in terms of that, though, I mean, I don't know how this year will look because of COVID, if people go to games and whatnot, but do you think there will be more fans showing up to G League games, especially the G League Select games, because there are guys like Jalen Green with high profiles, Isaiah Todd, those kind of guys?
I think there could be, for sure, but it's just depending on what market you're in. You know, Northern Arizona, I don't know if you're getting those fans regardless. You know, we've got a big-time gated elderly community. Maybe we get, you know, more grandfathers and grandmothers to come through and come and watch, but at the same time, it's not necessarily the most conducive of you know, fan
Just load
base.
them up. Just load them up on the bus from the nursing home and get them to the
But
arena.
they did
sell that
move.
bad boy out. No,
They
yeah, I
did
know.
move, so I may
They
be
did.
wrong
Yeah,
about
you're right.
that. But I think it's great for the league, man. I think it's gonna, like, that's why I think it's so important that there has to be a G League season this year. I think we've made such a unbelievable progression as a league, as a G League, as not speaking of the NBA, the G League, and for that to die and not have a season, especially at this time with this new influx of high level prospects, like regardless of there being fans or not, like the viewership online and, you know, on TV is going to be high. It should be higher. You know, I think it's a great development for the league, but I think players need to really, truly evaluate going to programs with strong player development curriculums like Memphis, that have guys that have played in the league, that have played at the highest levels, that have worked with NBA players, and need to really think strongly about, you know, being a part of those programs as well.
I mean, we know ultimately that the looking to involve this G League thing is going to ultimately come to guys coming out of high school to the NBA again. If it's going to be the 2022 class, 2023, is that something that in the NBA GMs and coaches are excited for? Do they want the guys to come out of high school?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. The more, you know, talented prospects to evaluate, the better. And the unique and unprecedented environment, I think, is, you know, front office executives are really thrilled about that.
And for you, Coach Pannone, I mean, when you talk about you getting ready for the season, we know COVID, we know there's stuff going on. How are you preparing for this? How are you getting ready for this and whatever it might look like?
I mean, I'm doing what I traditionally do in terms of I study a tremendous amount of film. I watch as much international basketball, high-level European basketball, NBA basketball as possible to try to find ways to gain an edge. And I do think one of the advantages of COVID is all of the different Zoom clinics. You know, I've been able to speak on them, host them, and watch a tremendous amount of clinics. So I think that the amount of information during COVID that's been available has been through the roof. And in terms of preparing for the season, it's you know, it's difficult to prepare for the individual team for the season because in the G League we have no idea what our roster will be. We have zero clue what it will be like for now. So it's more so like we try to do with the players, picking 3 to 4 things that I really want to improve on and learn more of as a coach, and studying those things and continuing to try to push myself and push my boundaries and learn as much as I can about different subjects.
You obviously were going to be part of the tournament that was one that's pretty big. I know the first kind of sporting event back. What was that going to be like? Just take us through that experiment, what you kind of were looking forward to if you could have done that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we got in the bubble, and the TBT people did a great job of putting together. The organization was through the roof. It was unfortunate that we got to day 4, day 5, and we had taken so many COVID tests, and we had a positive test, may have been a false positive. After that test, everybody on the team tested negative immediately following that positive test, like the next 4 times. But I understand their seriousness of just knowing that everyone's health was the number one concern, and so unfortunately we weren't able to compete. But again, I think the best part about that tournament was that it was the first thing back. It proved that basketball can be conducted in a bubble. We've seen with the results that were released today by the NBA, they have not had anybody test positive for COVID inside of the bubble, which just it tells you that's an incredible statement, and that's an incredible accomplishment. But it gives us hope for sport moving forward, and I think that's the biggest thing, because we know sports they bring so much positive energy to our lives and to the lives of not just the players, not just the coaches, but the fans. And so hopefully we can get things back to normal sooner rather than later.
And real quick about that bubble thing, we see obviously it works perfectly in the NBA right now. Worked for TBC. MLB is not really working so well. We'll see what happens with the NFL when it gets back. Do you think the bubble is something that's going to be mandatory or needed for it to be successful in baseball, football, and possibly even college sports?
Well, I mean, the big thing that we know is that model has been proven to be successful. So the big question to me is, can we do it without having to go that route? I mean, it's hard to say, right? If it gets down to it and we don't know, what the success rates are going to be outside of a bubble, then ultimately that's something that organizers of any sport could fall back onto. And, TBT kind of laid the foundation, and the NBA here is giving the roadmap to, if you really want to have an event, these are some of the protocols that you're going to have to do.
Talk about your legacy, something I was wrapping up with. By the time you're done with your basketball career, done with your coaching career, what do you ultimately have as your goals, and what do you want your legacy to be?
I just want to be able to change as much lives as I possibly can through the game of basketball. That's my first and foremost objective, and wherever those dreams and aspirations take me, then great. But for me, it's about changing lives through the game that I love. Cody and I are associated with the Haitian national basketball team, and I've actually started a nonprofit called Haiti Hoops, at Haiti Hoops, Haiti_Hoops on Instagram. And we're in the business of using the game to educate and empower and uplift the Haitian youth. And it's a cause that's far bigger than the game of basketball. And ultimately, that's my goal in life, is to change lives through the game, whether it's internationally or domestically. With that mindset, I think that ultimately can help me achieve my individual goals of being the highest level coach that I possibly can be. But as we all know, this game and the leagues that we're in all starts with genuinely trying to help somebody achieve their dream and become the best version of themselves. And if that's if that's their goal, that's my goal. So that's ultimately what I want through this game, the game that I love.
I definitely appreciate you taking time to come on today, and I look forward to see what God got next for you.
Appreciate it, Zach. Awesome interview, man. Really engaging, and best of luck to you as well, man.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Zach. Thanks for having us on.
Hey, Zach, thank you. Appreciate it.
God bless.